Is I guess now it's recording. Thanks everyone for joining. This is for the upstream Kubernetes 6 Carpenter triage meeting. We'll be looking at PRs as well as issues, and then we can kind of discuss which of these we'll be taking on next, as well as hopefully assigning some out. So we'll start with the PRs. We have, just by sorting oldest to newest, we have a few here. The supporting new topology spread scheduling constraints from Jason. Thinking we're still blocked on this though, right?
Um, can probably actually remove blocked. Jonathan reviewed it yesterday, and I'm just updating a couple of those last pieces of feedback, and then we should be good to get this in.
I think it's slash remove label. I think you can do that. Pretty sure. See if it works. Oh no.
I can go ahead and figure it out.
Sounds good.
Yeah, we need to add it to our plugin. Okay. There's an AI. Probably also just like considering which label should still be here, but anyway.
Yeah, I think just like kind of general label audit. Fix remove label.
Yeah, we can just convert that to an issue after the meeting's over.
Okay. Well, thanks for taking a look, Jonathan. At the PR, that is, not necessarily the AI. Node overlay. I know that there's not been any movement on this for a while. Just people bumping the PR, made sure it's not stale. So a lot of interest.
That's one thing to call out. I don't know if we called it out in the last triage meeting or just in the working group in general. We dropped the stale bot, so PR should no longer get closed out by a non-human, which I think is a big plus. Because I know a lot of people were getting frustrated by that, and we were getting kind of losing things. So just calling that out.
Yeah, I think the big thing remaining on it is another discussion around the design for the actual implementation of what this is and what is being added first as part of the overlay. I believe it was still just the price adjustment. But okay. We can move on for now. I don't think we're gonna get much traction on it for a little bit. We have add no name to consolidation warning logs.
Uh, can I just raise a point about the last one?
Yeah, please.
The node overlay looks like a super cool feature, and I think a lot of people are expecting it. Given that we're just talked about it here, because I was kind of curious, and I was curious about the same thing that I think Reed, you were just talking about at the end, kind of like what's the status on it? Could we just leave a comment in the discussion here, since like so many people are following? I meant on the issue actually. Or on,
Okay.
can we just leave a comment here to say that we talked about it and where like what we're waiting for the next steps? Because I know a lot of people are looking at this one.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. We can discuss that. Or all right that we mentioned it, and I think just
I think what you said before was great. You were just talking about how, we need to discuss a part of the implement of how it will be implemented before we start, making the PRs for it. I thought that was great. That was just, that just kind of lets people know what we're doing next, and maybe people will be able to help out and kind of push it forward or something. I know I was curious about this, so like I'm sure others who are watching this issue they'll probably get a lot out of, even if we just say something simple like that. So I thought what you said before, Reed, was, was great. It just kind of helped me know what was coming next or whatever.
yeah, thanks.
I mean, I know it's challenging sometimes. We do like, these like open source projects, they take up a lot of time and stuff, and we're like recording these meetings and we know people are watching them and everything. But I guess like I always look at it like anything we can do to help broadcast the message, you never know who you're helping out with this kind of stuff, right?
Yep.
It's great. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, then moving on, we have the node named consolidation warning logs. Been open since the end of October. Add node name and pod getting evicted.
Yeah, I didn't. Maybe Jason. I don't know if you looked at this one. I just looked at this one like yesterday, and I didn't get it. Maybe I'm missing something. But if the pod is evicted, like this is only done with pending pods, and pending pods necessarily don't have a node assigned to them. So, or if they're at least if they're pending and scheduled, then we don't consider them even still. So I didn't quite get this one. I didn't know if they wanted like consolidation warning logs to be expanded, but this change on its own I didn't think did anything because as far as I could tell, like we wouldn't actually print a node name because there's no node name assigned to these pods. So I think it's just kind of waiting on response.
Yeah, I saw that you had made that comment in the conversation piece.
I mean, unless somebody knows better than me, I looked at it and I was like, I don't quite understand, but yeah. Anyways. Seems like they're interested, so I mean they pinged 2 days ago.
Yeah, I'm curious
So didn't look at the issue.
what they end up doing with the information. Like it goes for a pod that's being evicted, and if it's being evicted due to consolidation, and then the node is going away.
Hmm.
So it sounds like this is a look back rather than a look forward. Like during consolidation, if a pod has to be evicted, they want to know the node that the pod is being evicted from before it gets, migrated to wherever it's going. That's my guess at least.
Okay. Well, until they get back to us, I think this is this is good for now. Thanks for taking a look, Jonathan.
Yep.
Okay, splitting termination controller. How are we
Yeah,
looking here?
I've put this one on hold. This is basically just a refactor of our termination controller to split it out into 3 separate subcontrollers for drain, awaiting for volume detachment, and then also instance termination. It's a pretty big change just in terms of lines of code count. So, and I haven't had the bandwidth to wrap it out yet. So this is kind of on the back burner for me. I'll ping once it's ready for review.
Cool. I don't even think we need the comment. It's on hold. Okay, improve no claim sorting algorithm using heap.
I made a comment on this one. I think we can probably move past it. I just basically said I think the scheduling benchmarking should be updated in a way that should hopefully be helpful now. We could actually validate this change.
Cool. Just waiting on the. So, do we think the scheduling benchmarking does enough? I know you recently expanded it, right?
So from what I remember, the change here is it just affects the fundamental way that we pull pods off of the queue, if I remember correctly. Or no, this is for no claim sorting, never mind. But it's see, let me check again. Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Like, I think I didn't look like deep at this PR yet.
Yeah, I would hate for us to like, I think there's two potential issues with it, right? Where if it's too short and this doesn't really kick in until there's many node claims, right? Like it would be useful to know if something extremely complicated, this helps versus kind of even in like a small number of node claims or some smaller cluster sizes, if it has an impact. Like I'd hate for it to show as like no impact, right?
I think we're testing with 8,000 nodes, if I remember correctly. Something high for the 20,000 pod benchmark. Let's double check. But I would say at like a 10,000 node count, we're probably pretty safe.
Cool. So we'll just wait for the most recent benchmark to be done. Okay, so drain and volume detachment status conditions. And just a time check, we're 15 after, so we'll try and maybe speed up just a tiny bit so we can get to issues as well. Jason, did you have any? Oh, this is the termination controller still. Do you have any update, Jason, for the volume detachment status conditions?
Yeah, just one last update I need to get in from a previous review, and that should be good to go.
Cool.
So yeah, nothing really to talk about here.
All right, we have my RFC here. I know we've talked about it. I think, Chigisha, you also have an RFC against this open, since you'll be taking up this now. So it might be worth just linking to that and then closing this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Use expectations from operator package. Look small, failing tests.
I think we can probably skip over any that are in the draft state, right?
Worked for me. Yeah,
Unless anyone else has a different opinion.
no, I think there's enough here that it makes sense.
And then the next one I'm assigned to, and I'm going to try and get around to reviewing in the next week or two. I've got a fair bit of context on it from having done the initial investigation for the issue, but I haven't been able to get around to reviewing the PR yet.
Good. Decouple label propagation. Let's see, what was the last piece for this? Looks like a couple new commits came in. Yeah. Michael, have you had a chance to look at these new commits?
I have not looked at it this week. I think the last time I looked at it was last week. I probably need to look at it again. I think like Tim and I were getting to a point in the reviews where we were starting to look happy with what Alberto had up there. Did Tim have an open comment still on there? I don't remember.
Let's see. Anything else?
Yeah, I think we're probably in a good shape. Do you want me like to go back here and just put an LGTM on it to signal to everyone that we're like good to go or looking for an approval or something or an approval review?
Yeah, that sounds good. Also, just making sure that those newest commits were reviewed, or maybe they were pushed in response to Tim's comments.
Right. I think Alberto responded to Tim's comments, and then I think Tim and I looked at it again, and we were both okay with it. But if you want, I'll go back through one more this time, and just like I'll put an actual LGTM label on it if it looks good to me, and then maybe that'll be a signal to the maintainers to come take a review.
Sounds good. Thanks for doing that.
Okay, cool.
Here's the node pull status condition. This is Jigisha's work. Jigisha, did you want to provide just a very quick update here?
Yes, I guess I've got some feedback on this and I'm trying to update the RFC. Once I have it updated, yeah, we can go through it, go over it again and see if there's any feedback.
Sounds great.
FYI, Jigisha, I think you've got a lot of feedback on your side. I think it's on you, but it's hard to tell.
I'm sorry, what, Jonathan?
You have a lot of feedback on your end. I don't know if your volume is too loud, but you're echoing every time you come on.
Microphone feedback, not PR feedback.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, thank you. I knew what I meant in my head, but thank you for clarifying, Reed.
Oh, okay, got it.
Okay, so there is implementing reserve capacity. Jason, I know that's with you and still work in progress.
Yeah, the core implementation is done there and ready for review. There's some additional tests I'm going to be pushing up, but
Might be interesting.
I can probably.
Oh, sorry.
Hmm?
I was just gonna say it might be interesting to talk about that one in next working group. Honestly, there's a lot of interesting stuff with the scheduler and
Yeah, is that this week or next week? I think next week, right?
next week, but still it could be useful.
Yeah.
We have a fix, make apply. Getting the right image digest. This is the problem where wasn't this repeating itself?
Yeah, there's an issue with KO or KO or however you pronounce it.
Okay, so we're holding for this. Looks like nothing yet. All right, so we're still waiting on Co. Drift reason should be available in info logs. Yeah, I think the larger discussion is definitely just how much are we actually wanting to put into info and what is the expected kind of troubleshooting story.
Yeah, I think I want to change this to a draft PR because I guess we are still looking at improving the logging in general throughout Karpenter.
Yeah, I think that'll be good to kind of review in general. But yeah, thanks for updating it to be a draft. It looks like you also have the finalization flow on Cloud Provider Get. You're just waiting for review at this point.
Yes, I think Jonathan is going to probably take a look at it later.
Well, and I think this is an interesting one, Elmiko. You may want to also look at this. Did you see the thread on Carpenter Dev on this conversation?
I do not think that I saw it. Although, like looking at this issue, I think I know where you're going with this. This totally seems like something related to some of the asynchronous stuff I've been looking at.
Yeah, we basically ran into an issue with AWS eventual consistency where EC2, like when you call describe on an instance from EC2, it's not guaranteed to tell you the instance exists when it actually does exist because there's no read after write guarantees. And so what we were running into is we were basically like deadlocking on a node claim deletion as a result of us basically not being able to handle that because we were basically calling delete once, and then we were anticipating that on a like we had delete and then we had a get right after to validate. Okay, we're going into a terminating state or that instance is gone. But what happened in like a very specific scenario was we called delete and we called get. So delete said the instance wasn't there. Then we called get and the instance is all of a sudden there, and then we just deadlocked. So this should fix that, I think. And I think it's a little simpler too, but just a
Yeah,
heads
very
up.
cool. I'm gonna write down the number on this one. I'll try and take a look at it in the next couple days.
Great. Thanks both.
Yeah, so interestingly enough, I was looking at it on the creation side. This is on the deletion side, but I think maybe it's an interesting test to run in some of the. I'm been setting up experiments to do more asynchronous like node claim lifecycling stuff. So I'll have to try the deletion side of it to see what that does because I haven't been looking at it honestly. I'm just looking at creation.
Cool. Yeah, I would love to hear more. Okay, so we have a few perf updates here from Jonathan. I think we're going to be looking at a lot of heat profiles and flame graphs.
I just vomited data in the description. That's the
Okay, so this, yeah, you want to go ahead and just kind of talk through. You have a few perf ones.
I don't know. I mean, we can maybe move forward because I think if for the sake of like getting assignments, like it's probably fine. I think we'll get them reviewed. I mean, short overview is like we're doing a bunch of allocations. That takes time. Reducing the memory footprint for our scheduler on
Mhm.
like large scale ups. That's pretty much it.
Cool. For this new unhealthy disrupted node claim metric, what was the primary contention here so far?
There was no contention here. It was just more of a getting through the feedback. I think we should be good now. We were just, I guess, for a high level overview, we were just planning on adding a new metric for unhealthy node claims in which we can add more details specific to like AMI IDs and the actual condition or anything else that we may see fit that that we wouldn't necessarily want to put into the disruption metric.
It just needs another review.
Yeah.
Cool. We have a null pointer to reference fix.
Yeah, I and Jonathan discussed this again in the morning today. It looks like this happens when customer has like uh, self-managed nodes, and if they are referencing the same provider ID, that's the use case where we can run into this issue. So I think we were thinking of ideas onto how we can fix this. One of that is probably like having for self-managed nodes, having uh, the name to provider ID relationship mapped in terms of the names itself. But I think that is something that we would need to understand better because that could this affect scheduling in general. Uh, so
This was super weird actually. So like we knew that well, basically we thought that cases where somebody has a provider ID, like duplicate provider IDs across nodes are invalid, which kind of sort of makes sense in a cloud provider environment because the IDs should be unique, but they don't have to be. Like there's no enforcement at the Kubernetes API layer. So what was happening here was like there was a node that was created, and then that node failed, like the instance failed or something like that. And then the node name was autogenned, and it wasn't based off of any of the instance properties. So what was happening was like the node would get recreated but with a new name, and now it has the same provider ID, and then that keeps happening over and over and over and over again. And so like, but none of those nodes were Karpenter managed. So basically, like non-Karpenter managed nodes cause Karpenter scheduling to just fail and panic. And we're trying to, I guess, that shouldn't happen realistically, but the way that we're doing the mapping internally is like not doesn't support that kind of behavior. So yeah, to Jigisha's point, I think like we have to figure out how to remodel the data. I think like she said, like the name is maybe the right call for non-managed because like we use ID because we have to link the like instance request with the actual node. But for unmanaged nodes, I think maybe it's fine to use the name.
I think that makes sense because the name is guaranteed to be unique within the cluster. And like you said, the ID, like, if we have to look up the ID through another mapping, like I get it's convenient to keep the ID around, but I think that makes sense to use the node name or whatever.
Do we have any Carpenter specific labels on the node that we could use to filter out any other types of nodes like a self-managed node?
Yeah, we actually have a logic in our scheduling state that specifically filters like specific conditions for managed nodes. Right now it's just using like if it has the node pool label. But for instance, like there was a race condition that we hit where like when like early on you'd launch a node and that node wouldn't have a provider ID when it first joined. And then that would cause it to like Karpenter to think there was another node on the cluster. And then like a second later, it would register its provider ID because there was like an asynchronous process for a little while for the cloud provider to get the provider ID from well, at least with EC2 from IMDS. And so anyway, to fix that, we like special cased managed nodes because we knew that like, okay, there's going to be a second and we shouldn't duplicate nodes as we're scheduling. Anyway, so point being, node pool, I think is the right label. Yeah, I think we maybe just have to put things into different buckets.
Thanks.
Okay. And then last but not least, logging for just a quick chore here. Already has the LGTM.
You don't even need to merge this. The CI test failed in the CI, so the logging helped. So anyway.
Great. Cool. All right, so those are the PRs. Moving on to issues. For issues, are we just going to be doing newest and then kind bug needs triage, right? Or just needs triage, period?
I think we wanted to do oldest, right? The needs trash oldest.
Okay, daemon sets not being correctly calculated. Is this still technically needs triage? Is there like more information needed or just investigation?
No, I mean, again, I haven't made a lot of progress on this, but I think I was able to reproduce this, so we can probably remove the needs tries label. I need to figure out what we can do to solve this, though might not be an easy fix, but at least I know that this issue, or the issue being reported is actually happening even now.
Let's see, it would be what's the one that we would add? Or do we just remove needs triage and we'll just update the issue?
Yeah, I can update it later to maybe add like a needs design label or something like that.
Okay, so we already took a note to fix this. Okay, Carpenter creates node that cannot fit pod. Agree.
I haven't gotten a chance to take a look at this recently, so I'm not up to date on if there's an update on this.
I mean, just a quick read from the description. Is it related to the daemon set issue?
Yeah, I think it's probably is related to that one.
Okay. Okay, here. A few weeks ago. Looks like it's just waiting for the author to get back. Spot-to-spot consolidation, unconsolidatable, can't remove without creating two candidates.
Yeah, I know this is an issue. Yeah, we've definitely talked about this one a little bit. I haven't really like gone through a comprehensive design on it or discussion on it, but I know this people run into this. It's still a feature request though, I mind.
Yeah, I think honestly, it might make sense to make a mega issue for like end-to-end node consolidation as a feature. Because I know we had discussed offline, but there are also some issues you run into with reserved capacity with not being able to split from one instance into two. But currently that's just not supported by Karpenter's consolidation algorithm.
For some reason I thought one already existed.
I don't know if there's one that's just framed as a feature.
I don't see one in the downstream or in the upstream repo. Okay.
So we might need to make an issue to try and gather some of these issues for as a feature request that allows consolidation to perform in such a way that it creates multiple nodes.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think generally, if you're just looking at on demand, I'd have to look at what the spot usages are, but if you're just looking at on demand, you generally don't ever need to do that in consolidation. But I know for sure with reserved, there are a few cases where we would perform a fair bit better if we could. So if we could start, maybe make a mega issue and start collecting use cases there.
Yeah, there's another frustrating case of there's one on the AWS side, but not on the upstream. We didn't catch it. There's some discussion there, but yeah, not
I
a
think
lot.
that is super core. Like,
Yeah, totally.
I think that's really well justified in moving over, even if we're going to lose some context doing so. Of course, link out to the original issue and such, but
Okay. We have a mutating webhook for identifying architecture platform supported by container. Let's see.
This felt unrelated. Yeah, I kind of think this is like a we're not going to do it kind of thing. It's kind of completely unrelated to Carpenter's uses in my mind. It's like a separate thing.
yeah, from what I recall, it felt very outside of scope, and it's not something that you need to implement from within Karpenter. It's something that could be very naturally implemented as a separate process.
Didn't the arch stuff come up recently at one of our community meetings too? Someone was and we were just saying, why can't you use like the standard architecture labels and whatnot? And let the scheduler figure it out, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we should close this, not planned.
Like
With,
there's
yeah.
sorry, Jonathan.
Oh, yeah, I was just saying, I think we should close this, not planned, with like a nice message about why. But
Yeah, like there's a well-known architecture label that should be on the node, and you can certainly use that to specify like a label selector for your pots, right? I mean, so does it need to be baked into Karpenter? That's the real question, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of this was, if I recall at least, it was you want to be able to not know the architecture of your pods when applying them and let Karpenter add that affinity for you.
Totally. I mean, it's great as a user experience feature, right? Like if Carpenter can automatically detect the image architecture or something, but what if, what if the image registry has multiple architectures for the same image or something? Now what does it do, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, I think out of us here, I think we're pretty aligned on closed is not planned for now. And that was like the latest feedback was this was out of scope.
Cool. Moving on, there's node is not ready and waiting at terminating.
Is this related to that asynchronous deletion issue we were talking about before?
Let's see. Kind of hard to get context for some of these that haven't been touched in months.
Yeah, good discussion on this one. They're really going back and forth on it.
sign Garvin.
The node got partition from the control plane. Okay. Well, latest looks like we're waiting for a few answers to Garvin's questions. Nodes in unknown state and clarification on high CPU usage and CPU limit settings. Has anyone on the call looked at this before? No, it went rotten a few weeks ago. Okay. Several high CPU node pulls trying to understand how to optimize CPU utilization and properly set CPU limits. Specifically looking for guidance on preventing CPU overutilization, best practices. Is this just
Is this a question about the workloads though? Like what, like look at the requests and limits, for your pods, like what limited how, right? Like what are they asking about?
some nodes intermittently transition to unknown?
Right, that's one issue, right? So like nodes going in and out, that's like that's one issue in my mind. But then the second issue here is like clarification on high CPU usage and CPU limit settings, like what limits, right? Like, and then the question how to properly set CPU limits. It's like, well, that's covered in the Kubernetes documentation. You set a request and a limit on your pod, and then like, the Kubernetes scheduler puts it there. But I guess the question is, yeah, like what's the deeper ask here? Like it looks like this gets into a question about why it goes into not ready and whatnot. Later, Jonathan. Maybe we should just like ask what the real question here is or something, and then. See, the unknown state is like seems like the real question they're asking here, right? The other stuff almost like isn't even related.
Hmm.
I mean, if the kubelet stops, what do you expect? That's like the kubelet sends a heartbeat back to the control plane. So like if the kubelet stops, there's no heartbeat. Of course it'll go into that's by definition like Kubernetes design, right? And then they say Karpenter tries to terminate the pods. Well, they can't be terminated though, right? Because well, they can be on the control plane. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just talking through the issue here. Like this all sounds like normal Kubernetes operation to me. Like I'm not understanding what the issue is here.
Yeah, this last line here. It might not be a Carpenter issue per se, but
Yeah,
And
that's
it's
right. If it's a problem with the AMI though, that's kind of like that's user configuration, right? That's not a Carpenter issue.
well, I'm wondering how much would help them with node monitoring agent.
Right. Depending on what like we don't even know what operating system they're running on the nodes, right? So like
mhm.
they need to inspect and see what's going on the node. Like why is kubelet gone? What's happening there? Like if you want to triage the node, that's like, that's the next step, right?
Yeah.
I missed it. Did they say were they using EKS or something like that? I guess that would answer the OS question.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, that doesn't even answer the OS question.
Oh, really?
We
Okay.
support, yeah, we support 4 different AMI families,
Okay. So yeah,
at least in
right.
OSS. Yeah, and then people can bring their own custom AMIs too. So
That's right. So it's like, okay, once we get to the node debug, right? It's like, okay, well, what are you using, right? Do you have some homebrew? Are you using RHEL, AWS Linux? Well, what are you using, right?
mhm. Yeah, at least in their case, looks like probably, or the latest Commodore's case, probably Bottle Rocket. But yeah, to your point, there's a lot of information we need to know from like the kubelet, what actually caused it to stop responding in the first place.
Right.
I
And at
mean,
that point,
typically
like,
what I see is someone didn't configure memory limits and
right.
uh, the kubelet got ohm killed.
Right. Yeah, totally, totally. But at that point, it's like, okay, we can point towards the Kubernetes like workload, limit documentation or whatever, but it's like, in the best interest of our time, it's like we probably shouldn't, it's like we're not going to debug your node issues on node issues, right? Like we'll help you out if it's a Carpenter issue.
Yeah. Yeah. With these, I think at most we can probably link out to recovery, like a manual of the work you were doing with node repair.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, as far as preventing it from happening, that is outside of Carpenter's, like what Carpenter configures.
Yep.
yeah, where did that go? Is that in disruption docs now?
Yeah.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, that's fair enough.
Yeah. Totally agree, Reed.
Let's
The
see.
question is, do we just want to close that too, or do we want to give them a chance to respond or something?
Probably give a chance to respond, but I would
Probably
update
throw a
the labels to
triage.
relabel it.
Yeah, I'd throw a triage needs information on it. Or you can do that with the triage subcommands. So triage needs information. Yeah.
Okay, we have about 10 minutes left in this meeting. That system reserved as a percentage.
Admittedly, this is up. This may be an OSS issue, simply because we've shifted kubelet configuration to the EC2 node class or whichever other cloud provider's node class. It's no longer in the node pool. So given there's not a ton of context, we may want to just go ahead and move that over. I don't, yeah, I don't think there's a reason for it to live here anymore. Because it's free for any cloud provider to determine how they want to configure kubelet. I don't think there is. I've looked at this before. I'd just say, like we can reopen this in the cloud provider.
Not to just throw needs information on it, but it's not really, I guess it kind of is. Like what cloud provider? And at least until we fix our labeling, it gives us a way to filter in the future. Emit event when eviction is blocked due to pod disruption budget.
It kind of sounds like the other one. Like, how pathological is this? Like, would it just be emitting event on like every reconcile, or like, is there a way we can emit the event once? You know?
I mean, currently we dedupe events based on the object it's being emitted against. I forget what the default dedupe period is. It might be like every 15 seconds.
Okay, that's not so bad then. Just yeah, just like I have a feeling like if you have some PDB in there, this is just going to be going off like pathologically. It could be for like hours in some cases, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Which I actually thought we did emit an event based off it. I'll have to go check. I don't know if in the interest of time we want to move on
Yeah.
to the next one. I can take a look async. Yeah,
Sure.
but I can take a look and
On you.
update. Yeah, go for it.
The JM deal.
Yep.
Cool. Yeah, feel free to unassign later too, but just to
Mhm.
get through these.
I've been refactoring a lot of stuff with termination and eviction anyway. So maybe I'll just work it into one of my existing PRs if there's a feature we can add there that makes sense.
Yep. Consolidation with spot by default is not appropriate.
This should not be the case.
Yeah, Now that this is true.
So, I mean, it is going to depend on a cloud provider by cloud provider basis, but at least for Carpenter, we filter out any if there's any on-demand instances that are cheaper than the available spot instances in the node claim, we're going to use them. Because we don't actually restrict the like capacity type. If we don't need to because of like a pods requirement, if a node pool is flexible to both spot and on demand, so is the node claim it creates. And maybe it is something consolidation specific, not on provisioning. I guess this one's probably needs investigation.
Yeah. I've been looking at consolidation, so I don't mind self-assigning. Nothing could be nothing comes of it, but needs investigation, not a thing here.
I thought it was.
Yeah, same. Okay. We're almost done with the August issues. Carpenter for any Kubernetes cluster. We want to make Carpenter and Rosa and SD clusters for smart auto scaling. We haven't found any documentation of Carpenter usage for Kubernetes clusters except EKS.
I think we could probably link out to the like implement cloud providers mega issue that I'm pretty sure exists somewhere in close.
Yeah, you might want to link out to the cluster API provider too, because that's technically like they're anywhere, right? Also,
Yeah.
I'll note that this person is mentioning two Red Hat products in there, Rosa and OSD. Rosa is a Red Hat OpenShift on AWS, and OSD is like an OpenShift, another OpenShift product. So I'm not sure. I don't recognize the name right off the bat, but this person is asking like, how can I run Carpenter on OpenShift, basically?
Okay. Yeah, no, I think linking out to CAPI makes sense. Linking out to the mega issue for other cloud providers as well.
Yeah, I've talked with people who've used the CAPI provider so far on like, VMware, AWS, Google, a couple other things like OpenStack and whatnot. So we know it works, but it's not feature parity yet with AWS or Azure.
Yeah, this is probably the issue. But yeah, I think we can close this one out. You should have /close permissions.
Cool. Yeah, I don't think there was any updates since August anyway. Labels and taints are missing. Expect to see taints and labels apply. Taints and labels are not applied. Looks like a triage needs information. Emmanuel asked for info back in September. Nothing of it happened.
Yep.
Yeah, this totally sounds like, did you configure the proper labels and taints to get, to get mirrored there?
Yeah. I also think in these kind of cases where there's a question, then a clarifying question, and the clarifying question, you get the answer, and then
Right, right.
they'll come back because their problem solved.
Totally.
Okay. I think last one, given the time. I'm wondering if this is a custom multifamily issue. Because the invariant violated, the taint's missing, but the taint's not on the node.
Well, it shouldn't be on the node pool or node claim, right? It's just injected via user data.
Yeah, in the case of yeah, I think all I was saying earlier was just in the
Or-
case in the case of custom, user data needs to be updated such that they do remove this themselves. Or like the register with taint, right?
Yeah. Which it does look like they're doing, so.
Right. I'm wondering if there's some race here somewhere. But a closed issue. I'll self-assign since I worked on this. And then that'll be this meeting.
Thanks. Have a good one, folks.
Great. Thanks everyone for attending.
So.
We'll see you all next time.
Thanks.